Welcome to Brokers and Booze, episode 15. My name is Billy Yates with Sands Realty. To my left,
Chris Ward, broker in charge of Eagle Realty.
And Nick Sowers, broker in charge of Beach Connection Realty.
today we are sipping on what people think is a tequila, but it's a mezcal.
That's what they try to tell
This
us.
is Ilegal Mezcal. That's actually the name of it. Mm-hmm. However, the reason it's not a tequila is because it's made from regular agave as opposed to blue agave. Mm-hmm. And there's other reasons it's not
it's also where it's made. All tequila is made in the state or province of Jalisco, Mexico, which consists of the area around Guadalajara. If you're kind of curious, there's actually a town called Tequila, Mexico. I've actually been there.
So it's kind of like following the same suit as bourbon in Kentucky.
Yeah, so it's definitely very regional. If it's not made there, it's not allowed to be called a tequila. So your local distiller cannot make tequila.
And traditionally, your mezcals are a little bit more smoky. And I think we've discussed tequilas and the different types. However, this is...
What's the name of the town again? The word tequila is made?
Jalisco.
There's a town called Tequila.
Right.
The state or province is called Jalisco.
Okay. Places I'm not going.
Yeah, and also this is episode. I might have to take a field trip. Can I point something out? This is episode 15.
Correct.
I believe it was episode 2 that Chris said he never wanted to have tequila again. So we're having mezcal.
I was going to say, technically, this is how I got roped into this. They said it's not tequila. It smells a whole heck of a lot like tequila.
You might have tried some
a little nauseous.
Super Bowl a few weeks back.
No, I didn't try any.
Oh, okay.
You didn't have
any in there?
Oh, well, that I don't know. That could explain other things.
That could explain my evening.
Gentlemen, why don't we give it a try?
All right. Yeah, so
Smells smoky. That's the first note.
there was another liquor we had that had that smoked salmon on top of it.
Yeah. By the way, Chris, this is a sipper, not a shooter. Slow it down.
You don't have to worry about that.
We'll bring a shooter back in a future episode.
It's just not smooth.
I've been so unbelievably smooth.
This is like, dude, it's kind of like your fireplace in your mouth.
Oh, yeah.
It really is. I mean, you got a little ting, you got a tang, you got definitely a smoky feel. It's definitely a fireplace in your mouth.
I could sip on this all evening.
So,
why I brought the water.
you know what's interesting about us drinking this? This is our Valentines episode.
Ooh. Now, I would say, if you do like tequila and you want a kind of a fun Valentine's night,
it does make the clothes fall off.
Sometimes yours, sometimes the other person's.
Nice little $400 dinner, maybe a glass of wine, and then the mezcal or the tequila.
Yeah.
As a nice dessert.
Do you recommend you do that as a dessert with your girl, or you're going out like you're at the bar beforehand, be like, let's do a shot or let's have a sipper?
Oh, sipper's always fantastic, but
before dinner, little sipper, loosen you up.
Just depends what your goals are. Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like this is gonna be bad. I don't know how much of this I can edit. The clothes fall off. I feel like you're on the floor before anything fun happens. If you have a little too much of it. You have to balance the quantity of this correctly.
Don't try this on the first date, ladies.
If you're not an experienced tequila drinker, you haven't experienced your wife. Yes.
This year, you don't want to be like sipping like multiple of these in a row on an empty stomach.
Yeah. Happy Valentine's Day, people. I hope you guys have a
last
fun
meal.
night. Mm-hmm. Only Yates would be like, instead of red wine, like a normal Valentine's Day person would, tequila.
Both are dear to my heart. So
near and dear to my heart. So yeah, but I mean, I will tell you though, it is. I think having the liquor shot, having something sipping. I mean, I think it's more popular now than it used to be. Like, as opposed to going straight to the red wine or going straight to that for even when you're celebrating. Yeah. I mean, my friends like to celebrate with a little tequila.
Absolutely. So. Leave the El Toro in the shelf.
We don't need
this
no El Toro.
This can be picked up for about $80-$90 a bottle.
Oh yeah.
So you don't want to be pouring this into a margarita or anything, although it's very delicious in a margarita. It gives a little bit of a smoky flavor.
So at $80-$90, are we going to find this in like local liquor stores, and you have to
Absolutely.
special order it? Okay.
It should be pretty common. So it's going to be in the tequila section. They might even have a separate section for
mezcal?
specifically mezcals.
Okay.
So mezcals, I mean, this I didn't look up or didn't know from my past, but this mezcal is still made in Mexico. It's just not made in the same state province.
Yeah.
But can like you make a mezcal in the U.S.? Like,
I don't see why not, as long as you have agave.
yeah.
So most of agave is, grown in Mexico. Here's another fun fact: it takes 10 years to grow one agave plant.
10 years.
Yeah. So-
Wow.
And they cut off all the leaves and keep the ball. I learned that on a Don Julio episode.
Yeah, this is and it's 40% alcohol by volume, so it'll get the job done.
Get the job done. It's not like your small batch.
There is a government warning on the back.
I hope so.
It says it
Don't
could impair
drink
your
this
ability
one.
to drive a car or operate machinery, and it may cause health problems.
It impairs your ability to drive a car and operate machinery.
2025 health benefits, which they failed to give you a warning about,
Well, I was just
which is digestive, and
Well,
increases your appetite.
it's actually been proven as far as I don't know diabetics out there. Tequila does not affect your blood sugar like most other alcohols and liquors do.
and
It's keto friendly.
actually-
Keto friendly, right?
I think so,
tequila is.
yeah.
Agave is actually 4 times sweeter than sugarcane, so diabetics can drink it. It actually lowers cholesterol. I mean, there's a ton of stuff. It,
Clears out the
It's
liver.
like
Makes you lose
defending the
weight.
point.
Make sure your liver works correctly.
it's hard to, yeah, right? Oh, it's like
Help
a
you lose
workout. It's
weight,
like
yeah.
cardio for your liver.
It's cardio for your liver.
I wish I could get on board, but boys,
Our goal is over the life of this Brokers and Booze is at some point
they think they're going to
towards
turn me.
the end,
You think they're
Chris
going to turn
will
me?
become a tequila fan,
That's correct. Maybe I'll become a gin fan.
and maybe I'll become a bourbon fan. So we'll see what happens. So
Perfect. We've got goals.
I was going to say, we got goals with Breakers and Booze 2020. All right, what's our topic here?
all right, so today we're going to talk about. So this came off a real estate board post, and it's somebody was asking about if their client has just decides, hey, I'm going to rent for another 2 years because I got a friend that's an economist that says the market's going to drop, and then I'll buy then. How do you, as an active agent, deal with that situation? How do you counter, push it?
Well, the only thing that I've dropped was my crystal ball and shattered that. So there's no real reason or way to say where the market's going other than what the trends will tell you cyclically every 10 years. But I mean, economically, everything's positive. Jobs are going up. Population here locally in Myrtle Beach is expanding, probably in the top 5 in the country. I think that's due to a lot of baby boomers retiring and whatnot, but or just tax benefits. They're realizing I can pay 1/3 of the tax, or probably 1/5
So
of the tax.
I saw a study the other day that our
Northeast
local population is supposed to increase from in our general area from about 300,000 up to about 500,000 in the next 20 years. Well, that's a significant increase.
And I would say supply demand. That'll create a market. Do I see the prices going down in Myrtle Beach? Not at all. Would there be a correction? Perhaps. Maybe in like small pockets, neighborhoods, things like that. But
I think that there's so much, like you say, and you think it's kind of trending, holding steady or trend upwards and keep going back. There's tons of. We just got out of the economic conference at our local association that was looking at the last 20 years really of graphing and stats for our market activity in both population, both inventory and pricing increases, and we're still below those peak years of 7, 8, and that kind of stuff as far as both inventory and price points and actually gross sales. But it's trending back that way to hit those peak numbers. So the question is, does that correct? In a sense, like, do we go back through a different cycle, or do we plateau and maybe not see the big jumps that we saw in 16, 17, 18 that were, massive?
So one thing I'll say, like one of the things in my undergraduate years, I did study economics as well, and I will tell you this: like everybody's like, oh, I'm not. When you hear both sides, like we're in a great market, or you can buy, but we still got plenty of room to run, all that, or we're at the tipping point, stuff could change. Well, even like that comment suggests that they expect another 08, 09. What that tells me is 7, 8, 9, when stuff was just, well, you got to understand, back then, even our local market, even nationwide, the financing is still different than it was back then. Back then, money was so easy. Like the setup is not the same. I'm not saying we're not going to have a correction at some point. I'm not saying money's going to go down. I just don't see the next one being as hard a fall as the last one, because the financing hasn't set up. There's people are having to put more. Prices haven't just ballooned. You don't have the I'm flipping my contract situation going on that was happening back then. Where all real estate goes up forever. I mean, I think there was even a financing option back then where you could put 10% down and you pick a payment. You could literally make a minimum payment like a credit card, which doesn't even cover your interest, and it gets added onto your principal. Or you can just pay interest only, or you could pay your normal 30-year principal and interest.
Or they extend it out to 70 years. That's right.
Yeah. So I'm sitting there when you have stuff like that going on, I get really concerned for where the market is today. I'm not feeling that as much. However, I will say, to that person's point, we can't ever know the future. I was like, does history repeat itself? It does over a long period of time. Does it in the micro? I don't think it does as much. I think it does in the macro. And I think I would tell that person, it also depends on what you're buying. I don't know. If you're buying your own home, I said you never buy your own home based on looking at pricing where it's at. You buy your own home because you love it and you're going to live there for 20 years, not because you're trying to make an investment decision.
Right.
If you're an investor buying, unless you're a flipper or you're like planning on mass appreciation, you're probably buying on income. And if you're buying on income, well, how much income did you miss out on 2 years while you waited on that price to fall? And is that more, or is that more or less than what the prices fell? So
cap rate similar to.
Yeah, so I think there's a little bit of that.
I agree that.
There's so much micro, I think, into it. Well, like you said, even there's micro in the situational on the buyer perspective of what you're buying and what you, like I said, what you're spending, what you're going to miss out on. Like how situational is that for an investor looking versus a buyer looking for a home, and is it the right home or property for them for the long term? Because those cycles are going to go. I mean, like you said, if you're going to be there for 20, 25 years, you're going to go through other cycles anyway. So however that goes, it's not going. It'll all play out and that'll even out. But from the other side of things, what you were talking about is there's so many different pockets. We can't just say, oh, prices are going to do this because you got this neighborhood doing this, you got this condo tower that might have, you have inventory coming out, 10, 15 minutes from the beach. Like all these little mini pockets to the localness of real estate in your market, wherever you're watching this from, has its own caveats, its own movement, and its own trends that make it unique. That you have to. That's why we have real estate agents, is to understand the trends in local markets and help buyers and sellers.
A local trend that I've had a friend tell me, and they live up north in the Vermont area. They said their real estate market can actually sometimes be affected by the ski season. Mm-hmm. So on winters where there's colder and more snow and there's more tourists coming, they actually see peaks in real estate that are micro peaks within their market. That depends on the weather. Right. And granted, they still follow the national trends like we all do over the long period of time. But within minute things, you take a town that's used to having 50,000 visitors each winter, and I'm talking way small, but all of a sudden they have 75. Well, that's 25,000 more people. There's a better chance of somebody, a little bit more demand for the product.
Well, the other caveat, I think, the way this person asked the phrase, should I rent for 2 more years instead of buying now? Yeah. And like I said, depending on whether you're looking at an investment buyer or your personal property, where we know rental rates are now, especially in our area, is it worth it to rent for 2 more years and not lock into a 3% primary mortgage?
You got to calculate the margins. Are you going to pay $700 mortgage versus $1,300 rental? Right. That's $500 a month. That's $6,000 a year. Over 2 years. So if you're losing out on $12,000 price adjustment, that might make sense. However, I think.
And if mortgage rates adjust over the next 2 years to 4.5, 5.5 in that range, get back to more national averages.
Everyone's been talking about the rates are going to explode by the end of the year. They're going up 1.5. However, they keep falling.
So me personally, right now. I haven't bought a house to live in. I'm living in a townhouse that I own that was an investment property we moved into with the plan of eventually buying a house And it's like, people keep asking me, oh, well, you're just waiting on the market to fall. I'm like, well, kinda. I said, but the reality is, if I found that place that we love, that Jill and I wanted to spend the rest, the next 20 years living in, the market wouldn't dictate whether I'm going to go buy that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and when I find the right one, I'll buy it. Now, granted, if it coincides with a drop in prices, that'd be great. If it doesn't, I'm still, you got to have, it's all on your focus. I think it's all on how long you plan on owning it. It's how long where your focus is.
And the flip side of it is that investor though looking at it, because we have probably most of us here work with investors, so, and in our market that's typical too, but having that conversation with, okay, do you really, what is the cap rate now? Is it better to maybe wait, save cash, accumulate, so that instead of buying one property this year, maybe in 2 years you can buy two? We can't predict it, but if there is any kind of a plateauing or a little bit of a shift or correct in the market where we get a little dip and find some more deals, then I am advising people to wait if that's their purpose. If investing is their purpose.
I think there's two types of buyers and I'm gonna remove the investor a little bit from this. I'm gonna go back to, because probably the majority of agents out there aren't dealing with investors. They're dealing with primarily the majority.
You think that watch this show? You think the ones that watch this show?
Well, maybe not watch this show, but hopefully that the majority of them. So you got the house buyers. So you have two types of house buyers, and I sit there and say, the one is the one that's sitting there, well, I'm going to keep renting for another 2 years because I'm going to wait because I think the market's going to fall and I can buy cheaper. Okay, well, you don't get the whole story there. Because what I'm sitting there saying is that person may be there because they might be renting and living in something cheaper than what they end up buying. And then you have the reverse person that rents something nicer, spends more on their rent. Then they're like, oh, well, I can go buy this and it's cheaper in my rent, but it's actually a downsize in property. May not be in size, but in value. Like they may be renting something that has a value of $200,000 to go buy a $150,000 house. Well, yeah, they saved money, but they actually downsized in property.
Or you incur other expenses such as taxes, insurance, maintenance. So,
I mean, I don't know. I think anybody rents, hopefully they realize they're paying that for the landlord usually. You're not getting away from paying that.
Right.
So, but what I would sit there and say is that person, hardly people are apple to apple where it's I'm renting a $200,000 house and I'm going to go buy a $200,000 house.
Right.
Usually there's a price change when they buy. Or, what I'm saying? I usually think that, or I'm renting this condo a block off the ocean for $1,000 a month, but all of a sudden I'm going to go buy, $1,000 a month affords me a $150,000 house 5 miles from the beach.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like there's a change in property whenever they move. And I think and then life situation I think plays in a lot. Granted, if you're single or newly married and you're kind of, you can wait, you can make moves. You got a kid on the way and you're like, oh crap, I might need a place I want a yard for my family, or I got a couple kids. You got to think different.
So moral of the story is less about just market perception, and there's more there's more to factor into the equation than just what the market's doing and where it's moving.
Yeah.
Drink.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, I gotta have some. No, but I do think that I think it doesn't. I think you're dead on, Chris. Yeah. I think it doesn't have to do necessarily with. If anybody that has that tunnel vision that I'm waiting because the market's going to change, I think the real person in that situation is so small. The group of people that are so small that can really be in that situation, because I think there's so much more that factors into it.
I always figure when you're trying to time the market, whether it be real estate, stock market, those that try and time it are the losers. So get in when you're comfortable, when you can afford it. Don't go buy 1,000 shares of Google if you can't afford it. Don't go out and buy a house if you can't afford the down payment, but situational. So even this might apply for investors. I've always had stock advice tell me, like, don't buy all the shares you want in one company at one time. Yeah. Like if you want 1,000 shares of Google, they might be like, well, buy 100 today. Wait a couple months, buy 100 more. Buy 100 more, buy 100 more. Yeah, so maybe back to an investor, it's like, okay, buy one condo, don't buy 14. Right.
Buy one, then wait a couple months, buy another. Wait a year or two, buy another. It maybe it's the dollar cost average
changes. You can start selling those off if you need to liquidate and get cash flow.
So
Well, here's my final advice.
Drink more mezcal.
Don't drink this stuff.
This stuff's
When making
delicious, by the way.
Wait.
I actually really
don't,
like
Don't
this
drink this stuff
I
when
actually
making
don't
your
have any-
decision to purchase a property at this moment.
We have a slight
don't
problem
be.
here.
We have a slight problem here. I need a little bit more for a final
Nick, that's
share.
why he was talking so much. I think.
Yeah, I'm loosening up here.
And I was just enjoying it.